Hey everyone, Paul Graff here with Remax Elite Brokers with your podcast, Sound Moves Today. This podcast about real estate in the Puget Sound region or sound advice for your life. Today's episode, I want to share with you about the National Association of Realtors Settlement. There's been a lot of news since that ruling came out I think it was on Friday of last week. Anyways, I just wanted to take some time to share with you an article which recaps the information very clearly in terms that most of us can understand. And this is not actually an article I've written. It comes from a site that I subscribe to, the lighter side of real estate, but it's a fantastic article and just does a nice job of explaining it in common language. I'm going to be reading most of that as the base for today's podcast, but I will be throwing in some of my comments as we go along. So, this is an article, again, like I said, from the lighter side of real estate about the NAR settlement. It's called Beyond the Headlines: Understanding How Proposed Changes in Real Estate Commissions Will Actually Impact You as a Buyer or Seller. You've probably heard the news that there are changes coming in terms of how real estate commissions are paid. This might sound exciting and like a potential game changer for you as a home seller or buyer, with headlines proclaiming things like real estate commissions are being slashed, selling your house will now be less expensive, no more paying 6% to real estate agents. But you're also probably not sure exactly what it all means, how it will work, or how you'll benefit from the changes. Unfortunately, even if you ask the most informed agents on the planet, you probably aren't going to get many answers. It isn't because agents don't want to answer your questions, it's because they don't even know exactly how the changes are going to work. The settlement happened seemingly overnight. There was no advance warning or discussions with agents. They found out by reading a bunch of headlines you probably saw at the same time they did. On top of that, most of the headlines are misleading because nobody knows exactly how things are going to play out. Any claims that the media makes that commissions will be cut in half or any specific number of dollars will be saved by consumers remains to be seen. The changes might reduce commissions. On the other hand, they could increase them. As with many things the government or court system touches, there's always the possibility that it could create more issues than it solves. But for the time being, as much as you might want or expect your local agent to be able to give you specifics, please understand that they can't. For starters, it's a proposed settlement not yet accepted by the courts. And if it's approved, the changes won't start until July. So here's what it means to buyers and sellers in a nutshell. Unless you're in the business, you probably have no desire to read through all of the court documents or proposed settlement. You just want to know what changes will possibly impact you. So here's an excerpt from the National Association of Realtors press release highlighting the changes that will most likely affect you. Now, I had the option this week of actually bringing you the press release from NAR, but I liked this article better because it laid out how the NAR settlement is presented and how it communicates stuff. So I chose to go with this article instead, and it does contain all of the information from that press release. So here's the press release. In addition to the financial payment, NAR has agreed to put in place a new MLS rule prohibiting offers of broker compensation on the MLS. What's interesting to me here, again, this is my comment, on residential real estate, this is something that has been common, putting broker compensation in the listing. I happen to do both residential and commercial, but on commercial sites, this is not necessarily a common thing. There's often situations as a commercial agent or I have to reach out to the listing agent to discuss what is the compensation offered to someone representing a buyer or a tenant, as the case may be, on a commercial deal. So, lest you think that this applies to all real estate, it is only for residential real estate that we're talking about on this. So back to the press release. This would mean that offers of broker compensation could not be communicated via the MLS, but they could continue to be an option consumers can pursue off MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals. So again, this is what I was talking about with the commercial stuff, right? Offers of compensation help make professional representation more accessible, decrease costs for homebuyers to secure these services, increase fair housing opportunities, and increase the potential buyer pool for sellers. They are also consistent with real estate laws in the many states that expressly authorize them. Further, NAR has agreed to enact a new rule that would require MLS participants working with buyers to enter into written agreements with their buyers. Now, this is my comment on here. In Washington State, we already implemented this. So this is not new for people practicing real estate in Washington State. And it has been encouraged, actually, in Washington State for a long time before it became a practice that we had to follow. But we implemented this back in January at the turn of the year. Turn of the year. So this is not new for us, but in many MLS systems around the country or other states, it is not something that they've been doing. So this is going to affect a lot more real estate agents outside of Washington than inside. So I'll go back. Further, NAR has agreed to enact a new rule that would require MLS participants working with buyers to enter into written agreements with their buyers. NAR continues, as it has done for years, to encourage its members to use buyer brokerage agreements that help consumers understand exactly what services and value will be provided and for how much. These changes will go into effect in mid-July of 2024. Again, unless you're in the business, that may not even be all that clear of an explanation. So let's put it in simpler terms. Sellers and their agents won't be allowed to offer commission to buyers' agents within their listing. However, that doesn't mean a seller isn't allowed to pay buyers' agents a commission. It just can't be published in the listing. And buyers will now be required to sign a written agreement with an agent in order to work with them, which will likely require them to agree to a certain amount of compensation. That doesn't necessarily mean the compensation has to be paid out of the buyer's pocket. It could be an agreed upon amount that will be negotiated into the purchase price paid for through the proceeds of the sale. Basically, it allows sellers to choose to not offer or agree to pay a commission to buyers' agents when they list their house for sale, and allows buyers to choose to not work with the buyer's agent when they buy in hopes of saving money. But before you do that, there are some things you should keep in mind. So, as a seller, here are some things you need to keep in mind before selling your house. It doesn't mean that you can't offer a commission to buyer's agents. Although you can't publish how much you're willing to offer or agree to on your listing, in most cases, it will still benefit sellers to offer and be willing to offer commissions to buyer's agents in order to get the most exposure for their home and ultimately the best offers possible. There's a good chance that buyer agent commissions will likely still be paid through the proceeds of the sale, as they have been for many years. If you're selling to a buyer who doesn't have an agent representing them, they'll likely expect you to drop your price accordingly, since you're not paying another agent. In other words, if your house was worth $500,000 and buyers perceive that a buyer's agent commission would have been 3%, even though it rarely was in reality, but that's what the public and media have often perceived it to be. then the buyer will want $15,000 reduction on your price below what they already want to negotiate as the fair market value. It could cause more risk and lawsuits that may directly involve you and your property. Dual agency, which is when an agent represents both the buyer and the seller, is one of the leading causes of lawsuits in the industry. The new way of doing business could create a lot more situations where consumers don't have their own independent representation, which could lead to either the buyer or seller feeling like their interests weren't entirely represented. Now, here are some things to keep in mind if you are a buyer buying a house. The way buyers' agents have been paid is a result of originally trying to protect buyers decades ago. Years ago, buyers didn't have an agent dedicated to representing their interests and were often unaware that the seller's agent didn't actually represent their interests as well. So rules and laws were passed to change that, and listing agents were compelled to offer buyers' agents a percentage of the commission if they represented a buyer on a house they were listing. This gave buyers more choice in who represented them and the ability to compensate their agent without having to pay out of pocket. So for many buyers, this isn't that great of a change for you unless you cherish the idea of representing yourself and figuring out how to do everything that needs to be done, or just trusting that the seller's agent will be able to truly represent your best interests as well as the seller. I just want to offer some of my personal take on this. If you represent yourself against another agent who is already under contract with a seller, they are not going to be looking out for your best interest. Think about things like an inspection on a home, right? If you have an agent representing you, when you go to look at a home and put an offer in on the home, they will fight for the things on the inspection for the seller to address before you close on that transaction. But if you do not have representation, a seller who is representing, or an agent who's representing the seller, is not going to be motivated to have the seller pay for anything else to get their home acceptable to you. So this is one example again, right, where it helps you in the long run to have an agent representing you as a buyer. So don't think that it's something you can do on your own. There are a lot of things that buyer's agents do. I would not purchase a home, even as a real estate agent here in Washington State, as an investor, somebody who wants to purchase investment property outside of Washington State. I would never purchase a property without the use of a buyer's agent in the state that I'm looking to purchase, because I see the value in that. And I'm more than happy to pay a commission to somebody representing me who's already a real estate agent, right? So I'm more than happy to pay someone else that fee for representing me and standing up for what I need in a transaction than just trying to work with somebody who's representing the seller. So back to the things to keep in mind if you're buying a house. You will now have to choose a buyer's agent and sign an agreement with them. This has always been an option, and it could be argued that it should always have been required, but most buyer's agents didn't want to seem too pushy or aggressive, so they never asked for one. Now you'll need to sign a contract to work with them. Don't expect agents to be willing or able to work for much lower commission than they have been working for in the past. According to recent data from the National Association of Realtors, the average agent earns between $44,951 and $58,528, and they work long and hard to even earn that much. There is rarely a day off, let alone a vacation, and they easily work more than 40 hours per week. Will you be able to find an agent who will work for lower rates? Perhaps, but as is the case in any industry, sometimes going with the lowest cost option ends up costing you more in the end. While you may expect sellers to drop their price because they don't have to pay a buyer's agent, don't be surprised if they dig in their heels and expect to get as much or more than similar houses have recently sold for. They will still be basing the market value of their house off of data that had buyer agent commission factored in. And if you go it alone, go in knowing that finding the right house, understanding market values, negotiating the best deals, and handling everything involved throughout the process from contract to closing isn't as easy as it may sound. There is more to buying a house than just finding it online, making an offer, and then going to a closing. You'll have to do the work your agent would have done and know what needs to be done in the first place. The seller's agent won't be doing the work of the non-existent buyer's agent. While it's impossible to predict exactly how everything will play out, those are a few of the things to keep in mind whether you're buying or selling. The best thing to do if you're curious or concerned about the coming changes is to reach out to your local agent and ask them for their perspective, insights, advice, and to keep you in the loop as the changes get finalized. Here are the 3 big takeaways from this article. While the headlines about changing real estate, commission structures might sound exciting and like a potential game changer for you as a home seller or buyer, they are misleading because nobody knows exactly how things are going to play out. While it's true the commissions may shift, the details remain uncertain. If the proposed settlement is accepted by the courts, sellers won't be able to advertise agent commissions. However, they will still be allowed to offer them, just not within their listing. In many cases, this will still benefit the seller to do so in order to get the most exposure for their house and sell it for the most money possible. And then buyers will be given the option to not work with the buyer's agent. However, that could come with some unexpected downsides and difficulties and may not produce the savings they anticipate. Fortunately, you'll still be able to hire your own representation and have an agent looking out for your interests and helping you through the process. So I hope you guys enjoyed this article. If you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to chat with you some more. You can reach me at 425-205-8810. You can call or text or send me an email, paulgraff@remax.net. Hope everybody's doing well. I'd love to get some feedback on this. And if you have any other insights or any interest in what's happening here, or if you have any interest in becoming an investor, need connections to referral partners around the country, I have a lot of those. Be happy to pass along work to my friends and fellow agents in every state. So just let me know where you're planning to go, and I'd be happy to get those connections to you. And if you need any ideas on who the people are, I've got some other videos with refer partners on this channel, and they're great videos, great agents, and I think you'd enjoy watching that and getting a feel for their personality and the fun people that they are and how they can benefit you. So hope everybody's doing well this week. I look forward to connecting with you guys again next week. Take care.